Today's podcast is with Jason Clossey. Jason Clossey is a consultant for the HVAC and home service industry. What he'll do is come into companies, take over the director of operations role, build out processes internally in-house, and then pass the baton over to someone to take over, on a long-term basis. When he works with companies, he helps to make sure they're generating great leads, make sure they're working the leads that have a great average ticket. And what he says is 90% of the work that he does is establishing an amazing company culture, a place that high performers are valued, a place that is attractive to technicians and other people throughout the area. And that ultimately leads to high profits for the business owner. Jam-packed with wonderful, great information. Please enjoy. Today's about you, let's put you on the spotlight and also help these clients and prospective clients. But is there anything in particular, would be important for us to go over, or is there a story or something, or something that, that would kind of highlight what you do or what you've done in a really great way that we can kind of queue up?
Definitely. I'd definitely say, it's really kind of an A to Z, right? It's a full spectrum for a lot of these companies, and all companies are at different places, whether they're smaller. I don't know what your audience is, but, if you got the couple chucking the trucks that are trying to really figure out, hey, how do I get this thing off the ground and going? There's a model you kind of want to follow for that. And then for the ones who are bigger and just super busy, there's three phases, right? So you got your chucking the trucks. Then you got I like to call them they're really kind of at that crossroad, right? They want to say, hey, listen, I don't know if I'm wanting to scale or sell. Now you got to kind of do the same thing in both of those directions, right? And then you got your just conglomerates, like your Gettles, your Heritage, those bigger $100 million companies, where a lot of them are looking to fine tune processes, right? Because they're typically been around, triple decade, right?
Yeah.
And they're working off of quantity, and we're now in a phase of the world where we need quality over that and efficiency. So they're really trying to scale that back because pricing is kind of out of control, and finding that happy balance is tough. And plus you're getting a lot of the older heads who are now shifting out and getting the younger kids moving in. And they have a complete different mindset, right?
Sure.
And it's easier, honestly, for me, it's easier to help mold the younger generation than it is the older generation, for sure. Right. Old dog new tricks. So, but yeah, I'd say the basis of it was just how I got started. And that's kind of where I ended up, or how I learned to end up where I am now, because I saw the struggles, and it kind of just was a light bulb really real quick. So yeah, I kind of was in finance for 15, 20 years, and I was in sales. I've been in production plus 20 plus years. Doing that, I just kind of gravitated towards it really. And I hate production, and I don't hate production, but I hate sales, right? And I hate what sales really kind of has been stereotyped to be. So for me, it never really fit my personality, and I always had to work in a different way around. I always got training and taught a certain way to do it right. The old skill, overcome objections, the ABC, always be closing, right? You
Sure.
got all these different ways to do it, and it never fit my personality, and I tried it and I failed. And then I finally learned to adapt to my personality, and then found out that I really had a way better response from individuals and clients and customers. And I've done B2C and B2B. So then I ended up getting into, after that, I was just kind of done with it, right? I was like, you know what, sales really isn't what I want to spend the rest of my life with. Doing the 100 to 0, 100 to 0, 100 to 0 every single month. Psychologically, it takes a toll on you. So I was very successful in doing what I was doing. And I kind of just talked to the wife, and we had a little one. At that time, she turned 1. And I said, well, I'm going to switch gears. I said, do you trust me? And she's like, I got you. So yeah. I said, all right. I said, well, I want to go into the trade, right? I was raised in a blue collar family. My dad's still doing construction work to this day, 63 years old. And I grew up doing construction work, and I started blueberry raking when I was 10 years old. So for me, I felt a lot more of, I guess, a simple happiness inside of a trade and working with my hands and being outside and just, kind of getting that that respect from it or that satisfaction from it. So I said, I researched a ton of different trades, and I'm not knocking any trade out there, but for me, I landed on HVAC and kind of the plumbing world just because the security in it, the forecasting in it was super strong. And I mean, I was looking all to 2025, 2028 at the time. They had forecasting for 10 years out. And the recession proof of it. And it was 2019 is when I made the switch, right? So lo and behold, the minute I went for my first interview, so I'm sitting in school, a 15-week job ready course. And I was like, oh, I'm going to do this. And I took a job ready course at a community college real quick, right? And I'm sitting in there, and I never turned a screwdriver in my life except for fix a doorknob at my house.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
I get in there, and we're 11 weeks in. And they say, hey, listen, we're going to shut it down. COVID hit. And I said, dang. I said, well, I need to go jump into a job. That's how I'm going to learn hands-on. So I jumped in with my first company, and out in Kansas. And I remember sitting there, we had to do the interview outside, mask on, everything, COVID's hitting. And in my head, I said, this is going to be a true test, because I still had really good rapport with all my past clients and stuff. And I said, if this doesn't work, I can jump back easily if this isn't recession proof. And I remember doing the interview outside, mask on because of COVID. And I'm talking to him, and I'd ask him, I said, so, how do you guys feel with staffing up? Are you guys scaling at this point, or are you guys scaling back because everything that's happened? And he looked me dead in the eyes. He says, we're having the best months we've ever had. I said, well, this is where I need to be. I said, if a pandemic can't do it, nothing else can.
That's right.
So for me at that point, all the research kind of was my true north, because I was fortunate and unfortunate at the same time. I hit it at a pandemic, which was a true test, right? So the irons were in the fire at that point. And so anyways, I got in there. I started an install, didn't know nothing. But within about 60 days, I was under this guy that really kind of helped me out. I went home, constantly was always studying and researching, just YouTube and anything I get my hands on. If I couldn't learn it that day, I'd go home and do it. And then I ended up getting into a lead install position within like 60 days. And then in another 60 days, I'm running a crew, right? And I got my helper with me. And typically they'd plug like a plumber with me to help me out. And really, I had to watch everything I was doing. And I was always, trying to learn and grow. And then after that was doing very well, another 60 days in, I ended up jumping into being a service technician. And then that's when it really kind of started clicking for me.
When did you get licensed and through all this?
So the 11-week job ready kind of course, all you got to do is get your EPA, right? So in Kansas, you only have to have an EPA to do HVAC work. So I got my universal, my EPA universal when I was with that in that school. So I was already licensed going right into it.
11 weeks.
Yeah. So boom. I mean, yeah. And what's crazy, I tell everybody on HVAC, you can make just as much money in HVAC that you can in plumbing. Plumbing, you require 4 years, right? You got to be journeyman, got to, follow all these credentials. HVAC, you can literally grab an app for $10, study it at night, go in and, get a proctor test done in 15, 20 minutes, and boom, you're out and you got universal and you can work on anything. I ran 10 calls. And I remember the first day I did, this guy, right, the 6 million top guy in this big organization. And he's used to doing that little 3 fold out form, right?
Yeah.
And, I could see his face kind of falling out. He's like, hey, Jason, you ready to go? And I said, yeah, man, I'll do it. He's like, okay, this is your call, right? I've been riding with him for 30 days. And that was my time to get out there and be the old tiger, right? So I set this whole system up and I got to stay in there. It was very quick, set it up, got the laptop. And I just started talking to the homeowner, and I go through this presentation. And this presentation was very quick. It was only about 45 seconds long because you need to hold somebody's attention. Had a lot of motion built into it. And then obviously through that, I use, a sequence that I train a lot of the guys on now to connect with the customer, pull out, some of the internal aspects. Mm-hmm. And ran the guy that was with me, I could see his face kind of falling out. By the time I got to the end of it, he's like, okay, man, yeah, let's go and do it. And then the second one closed it, third one closed it. I ran 7 calls, converted 100%. And he's just kind of looking at me and he goes, man, he's like, can you show me how to do this? And then I finally got the blessing from the owner of the company. He's like, yeah, he's like, teach the whole team. He's like, can you actually be our sales manager? So I'd been with them for like 45 days. I'm a $100 million company, been in HVAC for maybe 4 months at this point, right? Mm-hmm. And now I'm managing an entire sales team in the HVAC world. And he looked at me, he was very philosophical, very smart businessman. And he's like, man, you have an intuitive mind that you're able to kind of see where we're at. He's like, and be able to inject some of these processes that we need to start getting these guys to do. He's like, but how do we continue it, right? So I kind of sat back and I talked to the wife. I said, I kind of see this common theme happen with a lot of companies. Like they all go through these Nexstar, right? They go through these big SGI companies. They all get pumped up. And you and I talked about this the other day. They all get pumped up when they go out there. And I think they have a ton of value to provide. It's great. But just like a technician, when you sit in a room and you get really pumped up, or I kind of related to people, they go home, right? Or you're home, you have a great idea. You're talking to the wife. You're there that night. Everybody's pumped up. You're ready to go. I mean, if you could execute right now, you would, right? And then you sleep on it, you wake up the next day and like, you know what? You go right back to sticking to what's secure, safety, and comfortable, right? People stay in their comfort zone, and they really don't try to. You got to be a different breed to really continue to execute, because that emotion is not tied to it anymore. So
it reminds me of like all the times that I've tried to go on a diet. And it's like, late at night, I'm like, oh, I'm doing this. I'm sticking with it. And like,
and you wake up and it goes.
The next day, I'm like, oh, actually, Chipotle does sound pretty good right now.
I got this. Yeah. And it's the same with, right, huge ideas, right? People have these great ideas and there's a ton of emotion behind it. That's your key point right there. That's your turning point, is that emotion that you can get to that. And also too, that emotion ties to everything else that we do in every trade company, why you get a phone call, and the reason why you can be successful and convert very well in your process is by tying everything back to that emotion. So
if I can dive in just a little bit. So
yeah.
I mean, Jason, like everything you've been going through is just, it's so amazing, because number one, it's exactly what people need. When I speak to our clients, or, when I'm speaking to prospective clients, it's like, I'm seeing this big thing that, it's like, wow, if people were able to triple their average ticket, which is kind of what you were talking about, with your first position, how they went from 20K a month all the way up to 60K a month pretty rapidly. And then you talked about your role as a comfort advisor. If we could like chunk down a little bit, what were some of the specific things that really allowed you to be successful, and and where the process before just wasn't working?
Yeah, 100%. So a lot of it comes back to, and this even ties into like Nexstar and things like that, but a lot of it comes down to I like to call it the sidebar conversation, right? Where I found my successes is it comes back to making sure you connect with the homeowner, right? So you got to build, there's all kinds of data statistics out there, and we won't go too much into the weeds on that, but you got to be able to, first thing you do is come in and you got to connect with the homeowner, because they don't trust you. You're a contractor in their eyes, 100%, right? Number two, the night has come and gone when they made that call. The emotion's no longer tied to it. So how do you find your place to bring that emotion back that makes them either pumped up or really not scared, but really the sense of urgency back to them? But it has to be related back to their emotion, not you building the urgency, right? A lot of people miss the mark where they try to build the urgency in fear tactics, or they try to build the urgency in a price, right? You can't do it. It's got to be based off of their own personal emotion.
Yeah.
That's tied to it. And that's really, there's data and there's studies that have been done where people have gone out with salesmen and they have done a word count study, right? And the salesman who allowed the customer to talk the most converted the highest, right? The salesman who talked the most converted the lowest. So it's like you got to say, hey, how is this affecting you? There's ways that you can approach it. Let the homeowner talk as much as possible. And what you'll do is you'll start to see that emotion come back up. Sometimes it comes out in a way of anger. Sometimes it comes in a way of they have no clue what's happening, and you can kind of help guide them along the way. But really where I found my success was getting that emotion to come back up, letting them help me through the process and me kind of help them through the process to lead them to the solution, right? Not providing information too early to where, because psychology comes a lot into this, and that's just anything in life. So if you're talking solutions, first 15 minutes that you're in there, and then you're not preparing to talk to them about the price about it for another half hour, 45 minutes, they're going to ponder on everything that you just told them. And they're totaling everything up in their mind, right? So they're going to take a position really early on. So And then the other part is you got to get them to, you already know there's no such, like, I'm not a proponent on overcoming objections, but on Victor Antonio talks a lot about this, but objection blocking. And what that does is I'll bring up stories all the time just to like an objection story on pricing or on price versus cost. And I'll talk to them about that to get them to take a position out loud ahead of time before I even get to the point of talking about the solution and then how much it's going to cost. Because the minute they object to that and they give you that objection at the table, it's over. They took their stance. If you can do well and overcome that objection, good luck. But 9 times out of 10, it's almost an argumentative stance, and you don't want it to be. You want it to be very passive. So I found my success really connecting with the homeowner real quick. And I know that sounds very cliche, but just being friendly, being nice, talking with them, but then also too, allowing them to tell you what the problem is and then dig, right? Your average technician will do well on external points, and that's heating, cooling, plumbing. That's the external, right? Yeah, this pipe, what is this? Internal is really how it's affecting them. Like, I can't sleep at night, right? I got a job.
Could we role play that really quick? You know, like, cause I'm kind of curious what that would look like. I'm curious about like what the common questions that you ask and what it looks like if somebody was digging in.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So typically, let's say if I came to your house and let's say it was a heating call, right? And it was a sales call.
Sure. Oh yeah, I'm in Denver and I'm freezing. Okay.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So for me, typically, I always like to talk to somebody and I just ask them like, hey, on my way over, because this gives me credibility, right? Like, hey, on my way over, I was reviewing your file, and this is what I found. Obviously, it stated here that you're running into a no heat situation. Can you just explain to me a little bit what's been taking place, right?
Yeah. So I just woke up and I mean the mornings here are always freezing. And this morning it was just like exceptionally cold. I had to get like the kids ready, and I'm just like looking at the thermostat and I'm reading, it's not working. And the entire house is at 60 degrees. So yeah, it was a pain in the neck. I had to get everybody ready for school and, still not working.
Right. And obviously having the kids and everything being involved in that and overnight, right? So there's no heat, anything happened overnight. And the kids aren't liking that in the morning when they get up. They move a little bit slower, isn't that right?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. And they also complain. They're way louder too.
Exactly. Yeah. So as they obviously get to complain and everything, for you and your process and being able to get them out the door, it's going to obviously take a little bit longer. So when did you identify that this was actually happening for you?
This just happened yesterday morning.
Oh, wow. So this has been going on for almost a whole day.
Yeah. No, that's right. Yeah. We've been bundling up and, just like really hoping that the weather forecast doesn't turn on us.
Yes. And we always know the forecast, right? So when you got the weatherman, that should have been the job that I did though, right? If you can be a forecast, you only got to be right 50% of the time. So we definitely don't want to depend on that. So what I'm going to make sure that I can do for you is take a look at everything real quick. And then we'll definitely be able to get you guys up and going. Because at the end of the day, we definitely want to make sure that your day is moving as smooth as possible. Be able to get the kids out of the house, right? And then not only that, be able to sleep well that night. Because if you got them grumpy kids, I got 2 of my own. If you got them grumpy kids in the morning, you might as well forget it's going to throw the whole day off. I bet you've probably experienced that a little bit, huh?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. If they don't sleep, like forget it. The entire, yeah. It's like you might as well like toss the day away because they're just going to be, yeah.
Yeah, no, I got 2 little ones. And then at that point, usually what I do is I'll go into like a personal story of my kids because now I want them to know that I'm a person, right? So I'm going to bring personality and favorability into that with my children. And I'll start to talk to them about my little ones and how they do it. And like I said, I give my guys 2 hours at every job. And if they burn through that call and they're out before 2 hours, I go back and I talk to them and say, okay, I want you, even if you got to sit down and have a cup of tea with them. I've had Miss Betty Smith, I've sat down and had cookies and tea with her, right? Just to talk to her about her. And it really doesn't have to be about HVAC, right? Or heating and cooling, because I want her to do what you just did there. Tell me about your kids. Like, tell me about them not moving through the day, right? They're getting up, they're grumpy. How's everything been going with them? And then the more you can dig into that, they'll relate a little bit to it. But that's all the information that I'm going to use when I sit at that table. So then when I go down through my presentation and I'm talking to them like, hey, yeah, we're third party, or hey, these are the reviews. This is what third party is saying. I'll say I'm going to be biased because, it's, the company I work for, but this is what everybody else is saying about us, right? That's a slide talking about the reviews all popping up and there are 5 stars, all that. But then really what I do is I bring it back to them, take them away from the presentation. I say, really what we're looking to do is make sure that this can get done for you in a really timely fashion. Because I know, so my focus isn't on a 90%er with a variable speed and everything. My focus now, because she told me it's her kids that are moving slow, getting out in the morning, the urgency for her is going to be getting this done as soon as possible. So that's her internal pain point, has nothing to do with efficiency. So even though I will talk to her a little bit about that, that's not my focus at the end of the day. My focus is going to be on her, getting her kids and everybody warm and getting them all set up to go. And that's really where my focus will be at the end of the call.
Well, I mean, I can understand how to train, you can have role playing, you can have like scripts that you work with everybody. But when it comes to tracking, if they're staying on script or if they're veering off, how do you handle that?
Yeah. So numbers, it's funny. Numbers can paint a picture really quick, especially if you've been watching them for a while. So if you got somebody who is converting really high but has a low average ticket, they're selling price, right? They're not building value. So that's a quick way to that's a quick identifier when you're tracking the numbers and the metrics. They will kind of tell you that story real fast. But on the other hand, is definitely just being in touch with your people, right? And talking with them. And, a big way to do it is constant reminders, and not in a way that feels micromanaging, because everybody will shut you out. Because the way you deal with customers, you got to deal with your employees the same way, right? Especially in blue collar, it's way easier to teach production to the finance world, right, than it is to blue collar. And I figured that out really quick, because they're like, dude, I'm here to turn the screwdriver, right? And then also too, you got to change your method on how you're paying your people, right? If you give commission as an option, it's going to become an option for them to sell. It happens every time. I've ran so much data on it. The guys who have a guarantee of an hourly wage and they have a goal built into that hourly wage, and that's how their hourly wage increases, they will convert higher every single month over, than the guy who has let's say a base pay with commission tied to every single product, 10% for this, 5% for this, 2% for this, because he says, oh, I'm here to turn the screwdriver. The option is if I want more money, then I can upsell, right? And that's what they think in their mind, but they're not built for it. So you got to change your whole mindset and go back to it. And the way to do it is the constant friendly reminders. We have a full community chat. You stay on top of that full community chat. You have a good rapport with your people. You build that relationship really quick. I don't really like to do a lot of ride outs with people. Like, I always hear the boots on the ground. People always act different when I'm with them, right? And they stumble, they fall, right? They're in the spotlight. They don't like that. So I teach and train and I trust. They're adults, right? And then I follow up and I work with them. But you can tell really quick if average tickets are dropping. You got your average estimates that need to stay at a certain point. You got to set your benchmarks. You hold them to it, but then you encourage and you celebrate success publicly. People love to be noticed. We're in a narcissistic environment all the time now. Look at social media. It is what it is.
Yeah.
And honestly, it works to our benefit because it doesn't have to be monetary. I don't have to say, hey, here's a $500 bonus for hitting your goal. I can say, hey, congratulations, Dennis, for this. Like, we have this whole chat and I'll pop it out there. Hey, good job on this. And everybody jumps in and everybody joins into it and celebrating success with them. He loves that recognition and that drives him to do better. And then everybody else sees that they want it. So then it comes into the healthy competition. And then before you know it, you got a culture that's breeding this environment of a behavior that's positive for the company that continues to grow with it. And then anybody you plug in underneath it, they're going to just fall in line because that's the culture, right? That's the behavior. And that's how people are. They adapt that way. Fortunately and unfortunately, we have a society of a lot of followers. So it works in our favor. If you can do it that way, you can do it the right way.
Yeah. Well, we just need good leaders, out there.
Yeah, 100%.
Really, that's it. And, what you're describing of a culture where everybody's celebrating each other's success and pushing each other forward. That sounds like an excellent place to work. That sounds like a place where it's like, oh man, we're all winning together. We're all, making good money. and and having fun doing it. I'm really curious to get your opinion, Jason, on some benchmarks.
Yeah.
Like benchmarks in terms of like what are numbers that are possible for an HVAC company to hit in terms of like average service ticket, average replacement. Like what are some like what are numbers that you normally see when you're starting working with people, and where are you aiming for? And I'm also kind of curious, like, does that benchmark, does that goalpost ever change depending on, I don't know, like where the company is located, how old they are, or how many employees they have, or does it always remain the same? I don't know your opinion
Yeah,
on
no,
this.
great question, man. I think for me, it doesn't really um, change. It hasn't yet. I've worked in Arizona, Kansas, New Hampshire, South Carolina, and in those different. I mean, that's all over the map, right? You got West Coast, you got the Midwest, Northeast, and South, which is kind of crazy to think about it. But um, so it does. It hasn't changed, only because you have the average. So your average ticket, right? Let's say HVAC's average ticket. Every time I walk into a company, majority of the time, your average ticket is roughly around, unfortunately, 350, $400. And your replacement is typically averaging around 8,000, right? So my goal is to get them, not my goal, but my requirement, honestly, like where break even is going to be, I need them up to 750 to 1,000 on service, and on replacement, I need you minimum 11,000, but I really need you at 15,000. And that's really kind of where we start pushing the envelope. Um, but a lot of that ties into multiple aspects, right? You got to talk about lead quality. I mean, and that's the reason why we work with companies like you. You got to be able to bring that in. So that's a huge, huge component. If you're getting a bunch of bulk leads that are coming through, yes, you can have, I mean, lead quality is huge. I'm just going to say that up front. Um, but if you're still working leads and you're still having a lower average ticket, there's a way to progress that and increase that to the 700 mark. And then the 11,000 mark, 15,000 mark on replacement. So that's really where, from what I see when I walk into it to where I get them at. And then once they get there, the mindset that I, train everybody on is I say, you're going to be, you're going to be the team that everybody looks to, right? You're setting the new benchmarks for the industry. And that's my goal. My goal is to set new benchmarks, because really the benchmarks are 400, 450, 10,000, for replacement. Those are benchmarks, but man, those benchmarks haven't been changed for, the last decade.
Sure.
And pricing has definitely changed, for sure. And we all know that on material costs, but really it's just the mentality of your guys. And really, like I said, most companies I walk into, there's really no goals. If there are goals, they're really not followed up on or pushed. There's really no metrics. The guys really don't even know where they're at monthly, or if you ask them where they're at, they find out at the end of the month. I can tell you from a production standpoint, being on the recipient end, that's a tough way to go about it. Because there's people that want to do well, and if you tell them mid-month, they'll get there, right? But they just need to be aware. So there's ways to get them there, for sure. But those are really kind of where, on average, I come and I see them at. And then within, depending on the learning curve, I'm not going to lie. So this is where another aspect changes a lot, is learning curve. And I can, there's some that I can take an average month of, no joke, I've seen average months of 25, 30. My last client got in there, the average month was 25,000 a month, right? And we were able to do net 100,000 within 35 days. So,
Wow.
yeah, I mean, it was a huge jump, and it was all really service. We didn't even have a replacement division in there that was really executing that well. So that's really, if you can change it quickly and get a hold of your guys pretty quickly, you can have a 45 turn time very fast on your net. I've seen some take 90 days. So it's all depending on the learning curve of your people and how quick. Because the thing is too, again, at the end of the day, you can't push too hard. And I know some people are like, oh no, well, you need to. Well, yes, the last jobs report came out, we had 500,000 jobs added, but we're in a day and age where not many people are showing up to work, right? And apply, and the quality really isn't there anymore. So with what you have, you can convert and do well. The only thing I focus on, really, my 90%er is culture. And if I got the guy stirring the pot and he's a naysayer, he's out. I don't care if he's producing 40,000, right? A month, he's out. And that really will set the tone quickly. Because if you can have a good culture, if people support the vision, they might be questionable. That's okay. But if they can get behind you and support it all day long, you can mold and get them to where you need them to be. It's just really a way of communicating.
And when you say plug in the leadership, you mean just get like the ownership involved, or do you mean anybody else?
No, yeah, you really want to make sure, depending on the size of your company and what your overhead can afford at the time, either just get an operations manager kind of plugged in once the behavior is created, right? If you get them to try to establish that, and they don't really have a good keen sense of it, you're going to be probably changing that guy in and out, or you're dealing with him for the meantime, because he might have a strength in the troubleshooting side and can answer all your technical calls. Well, there's technical support that can honestly do a lot of that job for you. So you're paying 100,000+ for something that's really not benefiting you on the production side. So you need to focus on that production side of it first, and then plug in your operation manager, or if you can get a good service manager in place and then an install manager in place, those two really will only be, your office should take care of itself. You got to be able to pick out your people who have been there. Like, we got this one lady, she's been here for about a good 10 years, but still a dispatcher. Okay, well, this is what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna say that you're now not the quote unquote office manager, but we will bump your pay up a little bit more, and we're gonna call you the leader, like the office leader, right? And some people just love the title in itself, and she loves to take on the responsibility. She's kind of like the office mom.
Great.
Yeah, and she falls right in. She loves it. She supports the culture, and you can find these people within a 1 to 3 year term to really figure that part out. And just as long as you can really monitor. So typically what I do is, on my last 3 months of exiting out, is I really monitor. My focus now becomes to the leadership team. And it's really to make sure that they can execute. I kind of start fading out, and I really allow them to start taking the place, celebrating the success, posting what they need to post out there, and really in with the group and conversating with them. You don't got to do the ride outs all the time. You ain't got to be hovering over their shoulders, right? You don't got to be doing this stuff. You just got to be conversating with them, and ask them about their day, see how they're doing. Don't be so hard on their attendance. Monitor it from a distance. If it works for you on an overhead standpoint and it's not messing up your grid or your schedule, give them that, right? If you give people, I pretty much say, hey, if I scratch your back, I need you to scratch mine. Meaning, when it's go time, and I've been doing this for you, and it's go time, and I'll tell them that if it's go time, I need you here, and I don't need any gripe. And that's the rapport we build, and it's unspoken, right? It's the unspoken rule. So you get a lot of these people that they'll drill in on these SOPs and these policies, and that's that. It's black and white across the board. If you're that big, then yes, you do need that. But if you're at a level to where, honestly, I tell companies all the time, if you're that big at this point, the truck and the truck's winning the day right now. Anyway, it's just the way the economy is. So you're in a good spot. If you're, doing the 4, 5, 6 million, 2, 3 million along that way, you're in a really good spot. But what you really want to do is you just want to treat them as people. And they'll show up. They're adults. They know what he's doing. If they don't have a job, right? So everybody knows it. It's very black and white. That's the easiest part to do with it, right? So a lot of that really has to do with it. You don't want to get the guy in there who wants to control things, right? That's power hungry on a title. These are the people you want out, right? They're not a good fit. We want a family atmosphere. We want people to enjoy to come to work. A lot of people escape things from home, and they come to work to escape it, right? So you got to really understand that background of it, and just have that conversation with people. I've talked people off of ledges before, and their work was their harmony, right? And it's very weird. You wouldn't think that, but you just got to get.
Well, I mean, that's like the beauty of the trades is, like there's a humanity in the trades, from the people who are, who pick this as, their line of work, to, all the customers, where every single day, you're walking into their homes. It's like a very human thing. It's a huge connection that you have with somebody. So you said something, Jason, I was kind of curious about, because You were mentioning that you're working with this company and you're really starting on the service side, and then just on the service side, it sounded like it was just a huge impact. But when I think about this, and like I'm curious to hear your opinion on it. Is like I just look at these numbers like, well, obviously the biggest impact is going to be if that turnover rate is higher and the average ticket for the replacements is higher. So intuitively, I would think like, okay, well, that's going to have the greatest impact. But it seems like that's not the case if you start on the service side. So what's the thinking there? And if somebody's looking, as they're looking to grow, like where should they put their focus?
Yeah, that's man, dude. I'm glad you brought that up because that's a huge thing. I walk into very replacement dominant HVAC companies, and they're like, "Man, my profit is here." Yeah, your big losses can be there too, right? So the sustainability is always going to be in your service department. And my priority number one in a company when I first walk in is service. I don't even look at install. I mean, I'll take a peek, see it, talk to them a little bit. They'll know I'm there, but my main focus is 100% on service, because your margins are always going to be much greater there. And not only your margins, but your existing customer base, they need you more in that department. And then anytime you typically get your higher volume is going to always come in your repair. So you got to get them queued up first, and then your memberships, right? You're gonna bang out, and if you don't have the memberships, you'll be able to have such a higher volume conversion rate in memberships for longevity. Or if you're looking to try to sell, you need to get that number up. Companies won't even buy if they're looking to do acquisitions. They're not even gonna look if you don't have your memberships up. So you need to have that main focus be in service and converting very, very high. And then what happens is then you can work on your install department as well. So I've seen companies who were fully just install and then turn the corner to go just service and really kind of just drop install altogether. Because you really got to make sure your guys are executing at a pretty high level and converting, or you're possibly pricing yourself out of the market, right? And that's usually the struggle I see with companies like, oh, geez, okay. Unless you got installs that have been with you for a long time, and installs are grueling. And I don't want to say it's an entry level position, but a lot of people come in and start on install, and your efficiency there is usually suffering. And it's really the hardest one to get up and going to make sure that they're executing and converting these jobs quickly in a timely fashion and callbacks stay low, right? So I definitely say all day long, put your focus to your service team, really train them up, get them converting first, and then put a focus to install if you're really wanting to go in that direction. So,
And when you say have them converting really well, like what does that mean for you?
yeah, so for me, it's definitely just to give them facts. I need to see their converting at least at 80% or higher. And then I need to see average estimates at 2.5, right? Average options per customer. I like to see memberships minimum 15 a month. So they got to be at least selling 15 memberships a month. And then definitely their average ticket has to be 750 plus. So that's pretty much the 4 metrics. I run, I call them baseball cards, but we have scorecards every month. And I make everything public for them, right? So ServiceTitan has a way, if you utilize ServiceTitan, has a way to track it. You can send it out. It's cool. It's fun. But I track it all personally and individually myself, because everybody knows there's a few glitches here and there. And you do that and you make it public, because again, it goes back to the competition, right? And it's not micromanaging. Everybody's exposed. Everybody knows, and people will be very surprised at how their technicians respond to that. They've been wanting to know, right? And if you put it in front of them, how do I get better? Okay, now I know where I'm at. How do I get better, right? I can't tell you how many assessments I've sat in and listened to on month one. They're like, hey, can you sit in on this assessment real quick? Yeah. And it's the person saying, yeah, I really just don't have a direction, right? Like, where do I go from here? Or how have I been doing, right? And everybody saves it for assessment day, 6-month or 1-year assessments. That's horrible. Don't do that. My assessments with you every single day, and I'll promote you in real time, right? You don't got to wait for 6 months or 12-year or 12-month. We're going to promote you in real time, and that's as you continue progressing. People see that, and there's that fruit that's hanging for them. They know it's going to come based off performance, right? So they'll definitely do it, but put your focus in service and set your benchmarks Don't put them at the average. Bump them up, get them a little bit higher, and have fun with it. Really, that's the best way to do it. So,
Yeah. Well, one of the things you started talking about, Jason, when we first started this conversation, is this idea of like the three phases for companies.
yeah,
You got like the chuck of the truck. You got people who are just I don't know, crossing the chasm of becoming a legit business, and
yeah.
then people are really scaling up. And so when you're I don't know. I would imagine about half of the people that are on our email list are probably in like that first category where they're just getting started. Speaking to them, where would you have them focus when they're at that level of growth?
That's my favorite, right? So now it's all depending on that phase of growth. So let me speak first to, and I don't like to call them the one-man shows or truck in the trucks. Like sometimes that has a bad connotation to it. So
Yeah.
I like to say just those ones who are really trying to grow, like what would I do? This is where it's going to shift for you, right? It's going to shift and it's only going to be install. So what you do, so here's what I tell because I have a few companies that'll come to me and they're at this phase, is I say, your profits can absolutely be there. Hire a subcontractor, number one. You do the selling, get out there and do the selling. And first, number one, get yourself a good lead generating company, right? So work with companies like yourself, pump those replacement leads to them so that they can convert, and then turn around, do either the selling yourself or bring somebody in and pay them a commission to do it. And then get a subcontracting crew that you can depend on, 2 or 3, test them out. They're everywhere. They definitely want to work. They'll show up, get them a couple of your t-shirts, get your truck, get the equipment to them in the mornings, get them to bang out the job, and then you do the follow-up, handle that customer service relationship and start to scale that way. Build your existing customer base that way. Don't worry about your memberships right out the gate. That will come in time, but that's going to build your quickest profit because it's controllable at that point, right? You're overseeing literally everything. So that's really kind of the first initial phase. Like if it was me, and I'm telling you right now, on this economy where we're at right now, because their overhead is so low, people are not focused on value anymore. They're focused on price. It's just the way that the world is right now. So the companies who have a ton of these 15, 20 trucks, right, and they just bought them and it took them 4 years to get the truck in because we can't get them in, they're really kind of in a tight spot because like you're hearing, our overhead is here. And yes, then we got to fight. We got to put that whole plan in place to get them up there. And it's not that tough, but where these other guys are, these just starters, go the install weight. You'll beat everybody on price. Bring a professional presentation with you. You want to connect with the customer. You want to talk to them about facts, which is situation. That's your next phase. You want to then do discovery phase, right? That's allowing that internal pain point, them discuss everything with you. And then you're going to go to your presentation where you discuss solution. And then you can do the what if in there. I'm not strong at that point. Like I hate that fear factor, but sometimes you need to talk to the what if, especially if it's like a cracked heat exchanger or something, right? So that's really your process. Have a nice polo on. That's where you're at. Then you got those other guys who are, let's say they're the $1 million companies. So they got a little bit, they got, a couple employees with them. You're now having your, depending on where they're at, right? If they have a little bit of an install team going, you can keep, I really tell them at that point, you have your install team, but you're trying to service the customers that you did the installs for, right? So now you can start to scale your service. Again, plug in a good lead generating company. You have to have it. You got to have quality leads to really get this off the ground and going and stay consistent. And then you start plugging in your memberships. Now you're looking for long-term. Now you're starting to build value with customers, but your overhead is still very, very low. So now you're still able to beat everybody on price. And then what you want to do, you got to be the big fish in a small pond. Stop trying to cover such a wide ground. Grab a neighborhood, one neighborhood, and just really just saturate that one neighborhood. And then it's okay to go old school and boots on the ground and buy, Bob is tearing out. You got Johnny running across the street that looks presentable, right? And he's knocking on doors and doing flyers and things like that and talking to customers and talking to neighborhoods. Make sure you're getting the lawn signs out there. There's so much basics that are being missed nowadays because everybody thinks it's all just internet based. You have to have that as a strong foundation, 100%. And that's what's really going to get you going in the door. But then when you're out there, you got to start saturating these neighborhoods. Like a lead generating company can't get my this neighbor, right? They can get me in the neighborhood for sure, And then it's my job to now get boots on the ground and get fully in that neighborhood. And then once I saturate that, then you start to expand. But you got to be focused on being a big fish in a small pond, and expand out from there. Don't try to stretch yourself too thin. So
Yeah.
that'd definitely be my advice to that group. But again, and this isn't, no, I'm not being paid for this at all, but you have to get in line with a good lead generating company. And hence why I'm talking with Mike. It's the way to go for sure.